What's up, guys? This is Wenzes. Welcome back to my channel. I want to talk to you today about taking a risk on you. And I want to share with you my experience with that because taking a risk has every single time gotten me a step further. And you know, there are those micro changes you can do that I try to do on a daily basis where I work on my limiting beliefs. You know, you can watch like the last videos on this where I see something, if I'm being triggered by whatever it is, and then I realize, well, it doesn't have to trigger me, right? This probably has something to do with something that happened a long time ago, because I could also react to that situation with complete objectivity. So, but that's like the small things. But and they work very well, so they have gotten me a long way with like everywhere that I am, and in comparison to probably like my friends or people that I've known since like high school, and then like, you know, my parents, like people that I've been every day, and I know that I do these things constantly, so I know that this is like the biggest thing. But when you want to feel like those quantum leaps, when you want to be at a point where you say, okay, I've been doing this for a while, I feel like I'm getting to this point of what for, you know, like the concept of what for is that no matter what you do, you feel like you're not going to feel any better. We've all been there, right? You know, why should I go for that job, or why should I go for that challenge? Most of the time we come up with those like, let's call it an excuse or like a reason why not, and it actually feels like this. So we're not just lying to others, and we're actually feeling this. It really feels like what for, because we know what I'm doing is I'm actually playing within the same playing field. My mental state wouldn't change if I would do that. Something would still be missing. And every time we feel like this, the solution to this is to overcome the current state of mind, your current reality, and step into a new one. And stepping into a new one means, stepping into a new reality means you have to let go of old beliefs that cannot longer survive when you're like on this higher level, and adapt new beliefs. So, and because like I'm completely convinced of that, and you know, this is like my experience, and this is how it's worked for me, is that like when we were born, like we're, you know, in complete self-love mode, so to say. Like even if you're a baby, you don't know any better, the world like you know, it goes around you. It's all about you as a baby, and then you figure out, oh, okay, I have to adapt somehow to fit in with the narrative. And when we are adults, we can get back to that, and that has nothing to do with being selfish. That has nothing to do with being, you know, isolated or anything like that, because the more you can be yourself, which means you stand in your truth and you are not willing to compromise that in order to, you know, be accepted by other people, or by whatever it is that we've been carrying with us. It's not even necessarily maybe the people that are around us right now. It can also be just, you know, thoughts that we've been carrying with us for so long, and now we've learned, you know, to I heard it somewhere else, to domesticate ourselves, so to say. And so the more you can step into your own truth and stand by, you know, this is who I am, and if you don't like me, or if society doesn't accept it, or whatever it is, even if you think, oh, I don't care about all of those things, like even playing a role of the isolated person that is misunderstood, you're still playing a part of the social atmosphere. Like I have. I don't know about you, but I can tell you I have, and that's like my experience with almost everybody. So even I thought, oh, I'm so different, I'm out there, but I was still playing by those rules, and I had to learn to overcome those rules. So like to understand that I don't have to be playing by those rules. If I want to step up, you know, a level higher, then I have to step out of those rules. And once you're like at this new level, you automatically, because you have so much more energy, because, you know, you're actually doing things that are like, you're remembering who you actually are, and you're doing things that, you know, you are just giving to you. Like so many people use the sun, for example, right? So the flower doesn't like expect like anything. You know, the sun gives energy to the flower, and it never asks for the flower to give it anything back or anything. So the flower in itself is just getting everything that she or he, whatever it is, needs by just being and existing. And once we get back to that, we remember that more and more, we kind of align back to the person we were. And so in order to do that, we have to, as I said, let go of old beliefs and get into new beliefs. So, but let me just get a step back. So the good thing about this is the more you do that, the more energy you have. The more energy you have, you can help others, you can make an impact on the world in a bigger scheme and all of that. So it's never a selfish act to love yourself first, to do things that like give you your preference, because let's say you have the belief of, I don't know, being a doctor is the best thing in the world, okay? But you don't want to express that in a way because you don't want to diminish other people of, what they're choosing, because you have this worldview of everybody gets to choose what they want, right? But that's like the overall thing. Everything you're experiencing, you'll always experience only through your mind. So you thinking, the best thing in the world is being a doctor, period, like not everybody can choose this or this like this, does not diminish me of thinking that what I want to do is the best thing for me. And the more you actually believe that being a doctor is the best thing, like it actually feels like this, the better if being a doctor is like the thing that is most in tune with you. And you don't have to be afraid of, I'm betraying so many people and all of that. So all of like this is like a typical limiting belief that we get to uplift or get to let go of, and then step out into the next sphere and allow ourselves to feel that. So as I said, you can do this in really small doses, and the small doses really make a huge amount of the work. But like sometimes it's really necessary to do those quantum leaps to really jump to the next level, because then when you get to a point where you feel like what for, it's because you haven't stepped like in a bigger scheme. You're ready to take that jump. And that jump is taking a risk on you. So what you're saying is every time you step out of this, you kind of like are willing to take the fall if it doesn't work out. Every time you're saying, I'm believing in me, one step more. I'm believing in who I am. Not necessarily like how much work I can do, but in like, I believe that it's more important to focus on what I want than what, let's say, society wants of me, what looks like it will work, or whatever it is. And every time you take a step like this, it will either teach you something, or it will just like catapult you to the next level. And I personally, every single time I've taken a risk on me, I have succeeded, or, I haven't had really taken a risk on. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, I've of course failed many times in many things, and I have trusted in love in this one person and didn't want to let them go and wanted to save them and felt like this is my calling, just to find out that, that was just a fantasy, that person wasn't who I thought they were being, right? But through that experience, I learned so much about me that then I could really take the next step and let go of the belief that I have to save somebody just because I see them suffering. Because then I realized, I'm having this belief that I actually have the power to do that. And my new belief was, now you realize you can't help anybody who doesn't want your help. And like, that doesn't mean that you're not available for them if they reach out. It doesn't mean that you don't reach out to them and that you're constant there, but it can only work if you always love yourself first. If you're neglecting yourself and while helping somebody, that's pretty much, it doesn't matter what you're telling that person. What you're showing them is it's okay to neglect yourself. So, every time we risk something on us, we're actually saying, I'm taking a step more into loving myself. And the more you love yourself, meaning you first off accept and you align more and more your worldview to a way which is good for you, which is like, let's say you're, let's say you're a rose, okay? And then your entire life you've been always told, being a lily is good, that's good, and so on. Until you start loving being, what you are, which is a rose, you can never really appreciate being a rose because you're always going to try to be a lily. And every time you try to be a lily, It's just not going to work because the rose needs a certain amount of sun, the rose needs a certain amount of, like water, whatever it is. And it's different than a lily. And as long as you're like pretending to be that, you can't get everything you need in order to blossom. So what are ways to risk it for you? And to risk it for you is most of the time, that's what my experience is, to take a stand on either losing money, because we're all attached to money in some way, losing respect from others, losing security, and you can do it in a way that is not even that big of a deal. Like you can kind of like do it in a way that is more of an ego thing than an actual threat. So for example, me giving up my job, which was of course security, it was status, it was a lot of money at that point, right? And it kind of like couldn't gone like that direction. But for me, I've done so much work that I knew the moment I actually step out of it, like really say that's it, I'm out, I'm actually standing up for it. So I had to face everybody who would think anything about it. Like I, at that point, have mostly overcome most of my fears, but there were still things going on with my parents and so on. But, like stepping up like this was an investment I did in myself, because I knew once I do this, I'm risking something. And because I'm risking something, it's like, I need this thing to happen. I'm here, but I need this thing to happen. And then I'm forced to look at all of those beliefs that are hindering me from being there and, removing them and getting into the next step. So for example, it was important for me to let go of what my coworkers will think. It was important of me to let go of, what I thought looked like success and so on. Or steps like this. I remember, like, it all started, I read this book from Jen Sincero, and she said, what she did, she got like a coach that cost $75,000. And like, at that moment, I thought, okay, like that's, first off, nothing that I at that point would have even thought of investing in myself, because this is what you do. It's not like every coach that you get will give you that. There are enough people who've done the internal work who know, like, oh, I've done like, I've gotten skills, I've learned skills on the outside world, and they've caused me, to be in personal debt for $100,000, but I was still there. But the moment these people then start doing like the inner alignment of the work, all of those skills that they invested in, they weren't gone. They could just actually use them. If you're interested in more about this, like, you can watch some of Sam Ovens videos, which is, very much away from any kind of esoteric or, align your inner thing. But the truth is this: you need a certain mindset and a certain alignment in your entire being and in your beliefs in order to access that knowledge. It's not just the skills, but they never get lost. The skills don't get lost, but you need to do the inner work and the alignment in order to be able to access them at a different level, right? So that's just the one thing. But anyways, at that point, I was not thinking about that. That was not my kind of number. But the risk I thought, okay, would be for me, would be to give up my job. That was the risk I was taking, because I knew who I wanted to be. I knew that staying in that job long term is not going to be my solution. I knew that. So why would I not take that risk? Because, well, like, what if it doesn't work out? Things like this come up. Okay. But if it didn't work out, then, I would find another way. I would find something that happens, but I already know I actually want to be somebody who, like, does her own thing, who helps people, who's away from the finance world, who does that. I knew that. I knew that theoretically. I just knew, like, my subconscious didn't feel like it. So I had to risk it. I have to risk losing my ego game, because once I put myself out in the situation, I kind of have to do the things. Same thing if you invest, like, Jen Sincero investing those 75 grand that she didn't have at that time. That's her way of doing it. And now by now I have invested in coaches, but for me, like, so far I have invested mainly in skills that I'm using. But because I love so much the whole process of doing this by myself, because the more I do it by myself, the more I can teach people. But I know how important it is to do something that will put you at risk. And it can also be a risk that is not really existential. That's how it all started. So, for example, standing up and like speaking your truth. It might be on Facebook, on YouTube, it might be a blog, it might be just saying it to your colleagues, to your friends, whatever you believe in, right? Like, if you really theoretically think, what's gonna happen? Are you gonna lose your job? No. Are you gonna lose like your apartment? No. If you're gonna lose any kind of friends, they weren't your friends to begin with. So on a very logical way, there is no real risk in that. Same thing with me. Like, I knew I can, quit my job and stuff like that. And if it didn't work out, I would, like, at that point, I was seriously thinking, well, if I have to, then I'm going to do something part-time on the side. Like, I'll make it, but I'm definitely not going back, because that's not the way I want to grow in. The other thing might take longer, but that's the kind of risk I was taking. And so you can take a risk in like your ego getting hurt. So like you thinking, because it's always just in your head, you thinking people are gonna judge you. By the way, I'm not saying that people are not gonna judge you. I'm saying that the moment you change your belief system, you just don't care. So I make always like those absurd examples in this. So if somebody always tells me, or if somebody would tell me, you're not a blonde, how embarrassing, you're not a blonde. I don't care. If somebody tells me, well, you really suck at ice skating, I don't care, because it has nothing to do with what I believe. So if somebody told me back then, you're a bad person, you just care about yourself, you're selfish and nothing like that, that was much easier to hit me, because I personally still had attachments to that. And we get more and more out of this loop that we understand, no matter what people are thinking, everybody's allowed to think whatever they want, and they can project onto us whatever they want. That has nothing to do with the way we feel. So if somebody says something to us and we feel that, it's because we have an attachment to that, right? And so there is no risk in letting go of those attachments. And you can do it with small things, but the big risky things, they're really forcing you to grow up. And this is the kind of work you can do that will catapult that. So as I said, you can do like the ego thing, which was for me, the first time I started doing the channel, it was a big ego risk, because I knew, okay, I'm standing up for this truth. This is way this is not what normal looks like, what everybody will accept. Like, all of those cool status points that I had, I would lose, because I started doing this and it was sort of like esoteric, and it was sort of not like what the cool kids did and all of that. And I was willing to do that because that was way more of my truth than what I was believing in. So I started with ego. I invested in people helping me to do this while I was working, because I didn't have time to cut and upload and so on. And the next risk was me quitting my job and doing all of this. I've done coaching myself. But the biggest risk that I did lately, that I said, okay, this is the next step, was raising my prices, because I realized that I've learned so much, and the value I bring, that's just what it's worth. And I stand in that truth, and I stand and I risk that. And so only with every time I do that, of course I take a risk. I take a risk that, nobody's gonna pay that now. Okay, that's the kind of risk I'm taking at that moment. And only through that I say, okay, well, this is the kind of value I want to offer. First off, who will benefit from this in a way? How can I align my coaching? How can I align everything that makes sense? Same thing. And every time, I just it's not like I wait it out. It's just like, that's what it's worth. Like, I know that's the value I bring, and it's like a natural thing. And you will see, if you gotten to a point where you like really step up in your own, worth, that you will not feel comfortable taking less money for it, or allowing some kind of disrespect or anything like that. And for me, first off, like a year ago, just starting to like put value to it, that I say you have to pay to work with me, that was like something I had to that was a limiting belief I had to overcome. But the moment I quit my job, I was forced to do that. I was forced to say, actually, you're paying, like, if you're working with me, you're paying me for being me. And before that, I was being paid for doing something I didn't like. That was okay. That was okay. But the moment I want to get paid for what I love to do, like, I had to overcome that fear. And the latest thing was the retreats. I had this thing of, okay, I need to like step up my game. I need to do this. So I want to do retreats. And I booked this retreat in Malaga. I think it was 3 weeks ago. It's happening in 6. And of course there was fear in it, because like I have to put up the money for the place. If nobody shows up, then it's me on the line. That's a financial risk I took, and I took it because I knew but that way I get to kind of like force myself. If I say, okay, I want to make this happen, okay, first off, how can I make it so it's not like that big of a deal, so I don't like feel like, oh, like, everything is gone. Like, I realized ego-wise that it will be okay if I fail, that it's still like a good step. Like, that was the first thing. And then but I stayed with it, and I believed in it. And now we're 3 weeks in, and I already have enough people that I am like on black numbers. Like, I already am not making any kind of, how do you call it? Like minus on it. Like, we have only 3 rooms left for single use in twin rooms, which were a little bigger. Then there's like the smaller single room, and I think there's like 2 suites left. But those are like a little bit more expensive. But like, it happened in the last 3 weeks, and I didn't even realize it until last night that I'm actually already paid. Like, I already paid like the entire venue, so to say. So that's all taken care of. And without me knowing it, it happened because I was willing to take that risk. And like with that self-confidence, I realized, but there were a lot of things I had to let go of. I knew I had to let go of. I had to let go of the fear of what, I was carrying with me, what my parents might think if I don't make that, or what others might, like all of those things that were going in my head. Of course, they're fear of mine. Like, I know maybe my parents would feel like this, but I don't have to like take that on. And every time you risk something like this, so anything that has to do with your ego, and it doesn't have to be that you say, I'm getting myself into depth. It doesn't have to go that far. It can start with you risking like your ego. It can be with you risking some kind of security, respect, whatever it is, but you're investing in yourself. So you're investing in the person you want to become. And even if it doesn't work out and you realize, oh, you either just learned a skill you can't access right now yet, like that's still there. But those are like external skills. Like, I personally have learned I've never, ever made a mistake in investing in myself when it comes to me overcoming limiting beliefs in order to get somewhere. Because through that, I was forced to trust more in who I really am, become more of the rose instead of the lily. And me being the rose, I naturally go to the right place where I get enough sun, like do all of those things. And it's so natural to me because the more I get in tune with who I am, I just know what's good for me. So that's been a huge thing for me, and I can't wait for the next risk. Like, I'm so happy. Like, yesterday, it was like, I think almost 10 o'clock at night, I called my mom, I did it. Like, it's all, like, I'm in the black numbers. It's all good. I actually made it happen, and I made it happen within 3 weeks, although I was nervous about it because I had never done anything like this. And so now that the first hurdle is done, I know the event is going to be amazing because the place is amazing, and I have a great, like, program that I want to talk about. So that's going to be really, really exciting. As I said, there's still like 3 rooms left in the twins room. So if you're interested, write me. And but it's still like, it's all taken care of. It's all taken care of. I have won that game with myself, and I had to overcome so much in the last weeks in order to do that. Like, it was so much of inner work, and if I wouldn't have like taken that risk, it wouldn't have happened. So you can decide, do you want to take a risk by investing, like, let's say in a program, in coaching, in like your ego? Like, you can start by saying, I'm just going to step out and be myself, and, you know, be willing to lose the wrong kind of people that are not in tune with who I want to be and all of that. But when you take like risks like this that will force you to believe in yourself, you know, things just happen. You know, like, how often have you actually, you know, taken a risk like this where you risk your ego and you've lost? Not really, because you realize there is nothing, like, losing is an illusion. You can never lose something that is who you are. So the more you're investing, let's say, in you stepping up and telling your truth, the only people you're gonna lose are not people who are like, you know, your real friends anyways. So you're not losing friends. And you know this on a theoretical basis. So the more you do those things, you know, the more, first off, you learn how to take those risks. You can take bigger risks because you know they seem like bigger risks from the outside, but for you it's like you're more in tune, you're more aware of that. When you do this, things work out, you know, and you just take the necessary steps because you know, okay, what would it take? What would it take? And then things just kind of like, you know, they come up. Like, it's not like you just sit there and they just happen, but you're aware of what it takes and you go for it. So yeah, let me know in the comments what kind of risks you've taken or you're thinking about taking. Yeah, then maybe we can talk about it. I wish you a great week, and I talk to you soon. Bye.